most useful insight that we gained from using the Global Farm Loss tool was that it allowed our team for the first time to properly estimate the food loss produced during harvest season, specifically for the province of New Brunswick. Essentially, the tool provided us with insights in how big the total loss was, but also in how much each category, meaning the marketable, the non-marketable, but edible, as well as the spoiled categories, contribute to each loss. For example, in our case, we saw the biggest loss pertaining to the marketable category. This in turn allowed us to map out where improvements could be made for future reference. In the beginning, we had to make sure how to differentiate between the marketable category and the non-marketable, and this is specific to what we consider marketable in relation to what the plants can process, the type of potatoes they can process. We do plan to use a Global Farm Loss tool moving forward, as this was the first iteration, meaning that this provided us with a baseline. When we carry out future trials, we have something to reference. We can see if there's been improvements made in our harvesting technique, and if there's not. I believe that these types of tools give us insights in more aspects than we might account for in the beginning. And from there, especially with food production, we want to minimize that loss as much as possible and gain insights in how we can do so.
I would say the most useful part of using the Global Farm Loss tool was being able to capture data over a wider data set than we look at for the traditional packing metrics that we use. We're usually focused on getting in-the-moment data or data for each individual piece of the production process. But using the Global Farm Loss tool, we're able to have a view of the overall numbers by commodity. And that's helpful in understanding waste and getting a view of just how much waste we're generally getting in the process. And so the Global Farm Loss tool helps with providing more focus on that not marketable piece, and gives a view of spoilage as well. And it provides reporting on how much falls into these categories. And it helps standardize that language around what is marketable, non-marketable, and spoilage. We're focused on the facility end and the post-harvest process, but we can target improvements in the field as well with the tool. And I can see us using the tool moving forward and kind of bringing that out to our farms as well, because it is easy to use.
The most useful aspect, I think, of the Global Farm Loss tool was actually how relatively simple it made the field sampling, because it was fairly clear what was required and you weren't looking to measure product that was never going to be sold. The tool is simply asking for the marketable product, and it differentiated it between the three main categories of marketable, edible but not marketable, and not edible. It became a very useful piece of information. I think that in theory there's a range of uses that could be developed from the Global Farm Loss tool in terms of staff training, harvesting equipment setup and maintenance for mechanically harvested crops, and even broader aspects of looking at loss in relation to forward planning of field selection, varietal selection of different products, etc. You couldn't assume that you were going to make changes to your marketing until you knew what you were talking about, which is why you have to measure first and then manage. Taking, for example, the broccoli that I've measured this year, there's not enough waste to justify doing anything with it. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it, so you have to measure it first.